just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom after these days, will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So we see a line of what? Prophecy down through history, right? So we've talked about the different kingdoms. So what does the clay and the iron mixed together, what does that symbolize? Who can tell me? Besides what the Bible says, that they're not going to mix together, what else does the iron and clay represent? Anybody?
It could be like joining through policies, maybe joining through marriages, just doing whatever it takes to join two entities.
Try to join two, right? So that we know that the Europeans tried to do that. How did that work out from history? There was a lot of intermarriage. Did it work? Or are they still separate countries? They're still separate countries, right? So we know that didn't work. All right.
You know,
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say that it also happens with churches and with ecclesiastic powers in that respect as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and joining in organizations and things like that. So.
All right, sister.
I had a question in verse 30.
Mm-hmm.
The last line, well, in my Bible, where it says, shall make known the interpretation to the king,
Mm-hmm.
and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart.
Mm-hmm.
That part, know the thoughts of thy heart. As you went through the dream,
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't revealed yet the thoughts of Nebuchadnezzar's heart. So I'm wondering, because I already kind of know the story, when he responded, how he responded to the dream
Mm-hmm.
by making the image fully gold.
Chapter 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that what this line is referring to?
That would be my guess, but I'd have to study it out. But
Okay.
it would be my guess because it's showing that his kingdom is not going to what? It's not going to last forever, right? And in chapter 3, he makes the statue of gold to try and say, I'm not going to let my kingdom what? Go away. But how did that work out for him? When God says something's going to happen, it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
Kind of comical almost that God reveals his dream to him. He's so distraught over it. It's a miraculous way the dream gets told to him and explained to him, and how he thought that by simply building a statue of all gold that it could undo everything else. And somehow we use the same kind of reasoning, right?
Now,
You can change it.
exactly, and think about this.
It's
So
illogical.
let's think about this situation for a minute. So we have this king, he has this dream, right? And he pulls all these wise men that he's hired over the years. They're supposed to be educated in reading the stars and whatever else they read, right? And he says to them, I want to know my dream. And what do they say to him? They say, well, tell us the dream and we'll give you what? The interpretation. He goes, no. No, we're not doing that. We're not taking that chance. If you can tell me what I dreamed, then I know I can trust your interpretation. Right? So he puts them in a hard spot and he tests them and they fail. Right? Why did they fail?
They couldn't interpret dreams.
Because they couldn't interpret the dream, because they're not connected to the Almighty. Right? Daniel and his friends succeeded where the other wise men failed because they were connected to the source of all wisdom. Yes.
But he didn't remember. He couldn't remember it either. So they were asking him to do something he couldn't do, and he was saying, "You say that you can do this, so you should be able to do it."
And that's a good point. So not only did they want the king to tell them to dream, but he couldn't remember it. So now they're in a pickle, right? Everybody's in a pickle. The king can't remember his dream. The soothsayers and the magicians and the wise men can't tell him his dream. And now what do? He can't remember it. They can't tell him. So now we're stuck until God brings Daniel into connection, and Daniel says, we can pray about this and we can find out for you from the God that creates all things what the interpretation is. And notice when Daniel tells him, the king comes across as if, oh yeah, that was my dream, right? It kind of like, oh yeah, now that you're saying it, that makes sense. That's what I remember, right? Because in verse 46 it says that King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face prostrate before Daniel and commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. And the king answered Daniel and said, truly your God is a God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. So notice we have a very powerful king who is a little violent, right? He's willing to just kill all these wise men because they couldn't answer his question. And yet, how patient is God with him to show him another way? How patient is God with him?
Very.
Very, right? Does that give us hope?
Yes.
If God can be that patient with somebody who's so vile, right, that he's just going to go out and kill all these people because they couldn't answer his question, how patient is he with us? Right? Also, as you think about this dream and the way it flows, right, does that give you any confidence that God knows what's coming and is in control? Anybody?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right? Because we can see that God knows the end from where? From the beginning. So he knows what's coming. So nothing surprises God because he already knows everything that's going to happen. Right? So that should give us some confidence that God, he knows what he's doing. He has a plan and he knows what he's doing. Right? All right, let's go to Daniel 7.
Can I make a quick
Absolutely.
observation?
Sure.
I looked at the word latter, and it actually can mean end. Or
You know from the history books, did the kingdoms flow in the order that Daniel gave King Nebuchadnezzar? Did they flow in that order? Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Let's look at Daniel chapter 7. Can somebody read Daniel chapter 7, verses 1, 2, and 3, nice and loud? Daniel 7, 1, 2, and 3.
In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another.
Okay. So in chapter 7, who has the dream? Daniel's having the dream. So in chapter 2, who had the dream? Nebuchadnezzar. In Daniel 7, Daniel's having the dream. And now this is why we tell you to write down your prayers and your answers. Then he wrote down the dream telling the main facts, right? And what did he see? What did Daniel see?
Four beasts coming out of the sea.
4 beasts coming out of the sea, right? And 4 winds of heaven. Now, for those of you that want a sheet that kind of reviews the prophetic symbols, I got this from Amazing Facts. I downloaded it. I can print it off. So if you want one, please see me right after class, and I will print this off. But this is from Amazing Facts, and it's just a list of the symbols that we see in Daniel and Revelation and prophecy, and the scriptures that explain what they are. Okay? So if you want that, please see me. We'll get you a copy of that. All right. Any questions on those 3 verses? So how many beasts did he see in verse 3? 4. How many metals did we see in the statue? 4, right? Do we think there might be some similarity there? I'm awake now, thank you.
Well, if you're reading the word, not yet, because we just know the commonality is 4.
We know the commonality right now is 4, right? So we're going to continue on. We're going to start in verse 4. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So the first looked like a what? Lion. So what do we know about Babylon? Do I have any prophecy students here? What do we know about Babylon? What was on the Issachar gate going into Babylon? What was on that? Who can tell me? I don't have slides to show. Lions, right? So if you look it up on the internet, you'll see that lions